Hi, this is Stephen McLean. I host the Finance Leader podcast. This is bonus episode number 6, and it will be an encore episode from season 1 on key leader values. Values make up our personal character. These values show how we lead and how we deal with tough decisions. Are we fair? Can we be humble? In the episode, I discuss humility, professionalism, technical competence, respect, duty, integrity, and courage. Enjoy the episode. Season number 3 will debut on August 4th. I am excited about getting those episodes out to you. Now go lead your team and set a great example and make a positive difference. I'll see you next week. Thank you. When you are leading, your personal character is everything. How you treat people and how you approach your duties affects if people want to follow you. When you eventually find yourself in a crisis, your real character will emerge. Welcome to the Finance Leader podcast, where leadership is bigger than the numbers. I am your host, Stephen McLean. This is the podcast for developing leaders in finance and accounting. On this episode, we will talk about the 7 key leader attributes that we should be developing and expressing every day. And they are humility, professionalism, technical competence, respect, duty, integrity, and courage. A leader attribute or value is the quality of your character. How will you measure up in your leadership when you add up all 7 of these attributes? How likely are you to lead from a highly ethical standpoint? Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are small matters compared to what lies within us." I believe that there are key leader attributes that we must be developing and expressing every day. This is who we are, and this is how we navigate the many challenges that we face. Leadership is hard sometimes because it involves people. You're going to be faced with multiple challenges over your career. You're going to be dealing with people, and when you deal with people, you're going to be dealing with some of the hardest issues. You're going to be dealing with team members who are going to have troubles, and they're going to challenge you on how you approach your duties every day. They're going to have trouble in how they approach their duties. They're not going to quite accomplish the things you ask them to do with the way you want them to do. They're also going to have challenges of their own character. They're going to face challenges in their own life, which is going to affect themselves at work. And how you approach that shows what kind of character that you have. Are you going to be understanding? Are you going to dig into the issue? Are you going to figure out what's going on? Are you going to also make that hard decision when you're faced with reality that the team member you have isn't quite measuring up and it's time to move on? You are also going to face issues with bosses over your career. You're going to have some bosses that are very supportive and want you to grow and approach their duties in a highly ethical manner. In addition to that, over your career, you're going to have bosses who are going to challenge your very own ethical standard on issues that you face. You're going to be challenged, and you're going to have to look hard at yourself and decide, am I going to do this, what he's asking me to do? Am I going to risk my own career? Am I going to risk my own standing, my own reputation, and do this thing that he's asking me to do? For example, if I'm going to be asked not to do part of my job that shows something negative on the company financials, am I going to follow through on that? Or am I going to do the right thing and process the information just as it is and show what reality is on the financials? Our profession expects us to have a very high standard of ethics. You're going to eventually be challenged on this once you have a long career in this profession. You're going to be faced with this. And what are you going to do? And that's why we're talking about the 7 key leader attributes that I believe they're important. Integrity is just one of those. All the 7 key leader attributes you're going to be tested on in your career. And that's why every day we need to be continually doing a self-assessment of where we stand on this. Again, leadership is hard. We're going to face ethical dilemmas. How you approach that, how you approach that crisis when it comes up is going to reflect on your own ethics and your own character. So that's why I say that it's important to you to continually assess where you're at, figure out where you need to work on, and then continually work on each and every one of these 7 attributes so that you approach your duties, you approach what you've signed up to do in leading your team in the proper way, in the highly ethical standard that is expected of us. Our profession demands that we uphold high standards of conduct and character. We have to be the honest broker, not only in leading people from a highly ethical standpoint, but again, doing our technical duties with the highest ethical standards. We must measure ourselves against the highest standard of character and ethics so we keep improving. We must be genuine in our approach, and I mean nothing fake. We must embrace these virtues and live them the best way we can. If we're not approaching our duties from a genuine standpoint, our team's going to know it and our boss is probably going to know it, but we have to be honest with ourselves. And that's why in anything that I recommend that you do is continue to do a self-assessment and have that honest conversation with yourself, or have a conversation with a trusted friend so that you can continually figure out where you stand in relation to values and skills that you have and your ethics, and then figure out a way to develop those values and skills a lot better. And it's very important to see ourselves as where we stand and who we are today so that we can have a genuine, honest approach to getting better. We must do it right, always. We must set the example. For what we do every day in our own duties, our team is going to emulate us. Now, I want to remind you that you are not friends with your team members in the traditional sense. We have a duty to push them hard in their pursuit of excellence. The most special and respectful relationships can you establish and uphold such high standards, and it's going to be a relationship of mutual respect. You need to push your team members to do their very best every day, and sometimes you can't approach that relationship what you would do in a traditional friend. We all have this sense or this need to also want to be friends with our team members, and I can understand that. But you have a duty to get the tasks accomplished every day, and you have a duty to make those team members better every day, and that requires a special relationship. That requires you to look at them and want to help them and grow them and give them the honest feedback and push them and understand them how they can be pushed harder and into a higher level of excellence that you understand. They may not understand, but you do. Again, as leaders, we have a responsibility to make our team better every day. We have a responsibility to our organization that we are being the honest brokers, that we are delivering ethical duty performance every day because people are relying on us to make the right decisions and to deliver on what we have promised within our profession. Now to get into the 7 leader attributes that I believe that are important in this profession. Again, these 7 leader attributes that you may not have the highest standard or the highest approach to these today, but I encourage you to do that self-assessment, to keep working on it, and to keep growing yourself in each and every one of these, as I'm about to discuss very briefly over the next few minutes. The first one that I want to talk about is humility. We need to be honest with ourselves about where our own abilities lie. And we need to understand that we can't accomplish all of our duties and tasks by ourselves. We need a team. We need people around us to get everything done that we're being asked to do. We are not a superhuman. We are not gifted with super abilities that we can just get everything done. Our profession and the things that we're asked to do is challenging. We are faced with a lot of different tasks, a lot of different requirements, and every day with all the requests for information and the explanations and the understanding that we need to do for the business, it's not easy. We need people around us who know what they're doing, and we have to be a good self-assessment of ourselves that we know that we also are a person who needs to grow. You're going to want your team members to follow you during tough times. And if you are honest with yourself, if you are humble and know that you're not perfect, and you explain that and you show them that you're growing, they're also going to have that same attitude of growth and understanding. And you're going to be able to pull together a little bit better, because no one wants to work for someone who thinks they're better or takes an arrogant approach to their duties. No one wants to do that. So that's why I encourage you to have a genuine approach, a genuine humility when it comes to your leadership, and for your team members to know that you understand that you're not perfect and you have a lot of growth to go for yourself. Professionalism is the second leader attribute that I want to talk about. We must be an expert on our field. Finance and accounting is a difficult field. It requires study. It requires understanding of complex issues when it comes to applying the activities of the business, because people are relying on us, especially if you work for a public company, to understand how you apply the transactions of the business in a proper way to a set of standards. So we need to continue to grow our technical ability so that we can apply what we do to a set standard. So we need to continue to work at being that expert and growing ourselves. That's what it means to be professional. It also means that we are a mature leader, that we continue to develop ourselves to have an executive presence, that we have poise in everything that we approach, that we have timely decision making, and that we continue to develop win-win relationships. In addition to that, professionalism also means that we have that minimum required education for our field. And I also believe that we need to strive for an advanced degree and either a certification or a license, because to be seen as a professional, we need to be seen again as that expert in our field. And we need to have the credibility to show others that we take an professional approach, that we want to become that trusted advisor to the other department leaders around the organization. Because when we speak about finance and accounting issues, we should be seen as that expert. And that leads us into the third leader attribute, and that's technical competence. Now, I don't talk about technical competence that much in this forum because I wanted to talk about leadership issues in our field, because I believe that leadership skills is a gap that we have in this profession. But you do need to be seen as that technical expert in the organization. You need to be able to know how to apply proper accounting standards within the organization, or know how to do a proper analysis. You need to be able to dig into the numbers when you're asked to. So you need to grow that part of your leadership. You need to be seen as that expert when it comes to your craft. So continue to becoming more technically competent and current on accounting and finance standards, because they do change often. You need to know what's changing. What are the standards around the profession is. Not only is the standards that are within your own country, but also international standards, because these are becoming more and more important as we're doing more and more global business. So continue to grow your technical expertise, and then you're going to be seen as that expert in your field. The fourth leader attribute is respect. Our team members deserve basic human dignity. They need to be treated as you would like to be treated. You have to approach your leadership of your team fairly. You have to approach the leadership of each member of your team in a fair way. You need to make sure that you are giving each person a fair opportunity to do their very best. Give them access to the same tools, the same training, the same opportunities. And as long as they are also meeting you halfway, you continue to do that. You provide that chance for them to grow. They deserve to be treated fairly and understanding. You need to understand what biases you have. And then when you're going to make a decision about someone's opportunity or a chance for them to do well, or how you evaluate the performance, you need to understand what kind of biases you have. You need to approach each person, and you just need to continue to develop on your team a mutual respect around the team, so that each and every person around the team respects each person's opinion. We do things in a professional manner. We do things fairly. We don't isolate others. We know that each person brings certain value and certain skills and experience to the team, and we give everybody an equal chance to do their very best. The fifth leader attribute is duty. To call ourselves leaders, we must approach our duties with a high sense of ethics, and we need to be able to set that example for approaching our duties in the best example we can. Because if we're not doing our duties, how can we expect others to do their duties? And I'm not talking about just your technical duties, but all of your leadership duties. You have to do the performance counseling for each of your team members. You have to approach growth of each member very seriously. You have to know that that's a big part of why you are there and why you are leading your team. You have to be a teacher. You have to be a counselor. You have to be a mentor to each of your team members. You have to hold others accountable, and that's a tough one for some people. You have to know if people on your team are not measuring up, that you talk to them and you approach them and you show where they're not meeting your standard. That is what it means to be completing your duties as a leader, as a manager of that team that you have. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions, and that's what leadership is all about. You sometimes have to make decisions about people's future or someone's opportunity, because you have to hold people accountable, and you have to understand that if they're not measuring up, you have a duty to tell them. You also have to make sure that everybody on the team is completing their tasks on time. Continue to go back to that accountability. The sixth leader attribute is integrity. We have to be the bearers of the highest example of truth and high ethics. We have to make sure that we are truthful and honest in how we lead our team. Because if we don't uphold those high standards, then how can we expect others to uphold high standards? We don't abuse our team. We don't abuse our authority. We tell the truth. We follow through on promises that we make, because our actions and our words must match. We have to know that power corrupts. When you're in that leadership position, sometimes you're going to be tested. You're going to be tested on something that doesn't go right. You're going to be tested in a crisis. You're going to be tested when it comes to an emergency situation. And you need to think about what your action is going to be, or your reaction, or your approach to something. When something's going to come across to you that's going to have you make that ethical decision, you need to step back and you need to take that tough, correct approach to whatever you're going to be asked to do, to whatever you're going to face. And that comes to this leader attribute of integrity. You must maintain the highest standards, strive for it, work at it, because once you don't do something properly, then it's going to be hard to hold others accountable in the same area. So continue to do that self-assessment, that you're approaching everything that you do today with that high form of integrity. The final leadership attribute that I want to talk about is courage. And it goes back to all of the other attributes and values that I talked about today. Our profession requires us to have courage. When you're in a leadership position, you have to have courage. You have to challenge the status quo on a daily basis. You have to stand up for what is right. We can't let an ethical issue fester. We have to take appropriate action to remedy the problem when problems arise. And then once we don't hold someone accountable, then we have set a new standard. And when we don't hold ourselves accountable, again, we have set a new standard. Another reminder is that when it comes to this leader attribute of courage, we must make sure that our responsibilities when it comes to the financials of the company are true, and that they are actually what they are, because the public and everybody else in the organization is relying on us to do so. Sometimes you're going to come under pressure to do something that you don't believe in. You have to have that courage to stand up and say, we're going to uphold the highest standards of conduct, the highest standards of our profession, the highest standards of how we approach leading others and growing others. We have to dig deep inside ourselves and know that we have to stand up to something that's not right, that is going to challenge the culture of our organization, or something that we just don't feel is right. You've got to have that voice. You've got to find it inside you, and you've got to have the courage to stand up and remedy it and approach the problem wherever it is and say that we're going to fix this. We're going to get this right. We're going to do it the right way. So for an easy win today, I want you to conduct that self-assessment of each of the attributes. I want you to list out all of these 7, and I want you to really think about where you're doing well, but I also want you to think about the different areas that you need to work on, because we all do. These are high standards that we're talking about, and it requires us to do that self-assessment and figure out if we are meeting the requirements in each and every one of these. So list them out and identify those 2 or 3 that you really need to work on the most, and develop a plan and ask someone that you work closely with that can also give you some feedback on where you stand with all these. Are you matching? Are you meeting up with the requirements in each and every one of these 7 attributes? Continue to work on it every day, every week. Do that self-assessment. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the show this week. We talked about the 7 leader attributes, and they are humility, professionalism, technical competence, respect, duty, integrity, and courage. The next episode, I'm going to talk about why leaders need to be learners, and that you've heard this before, but leaders need to be readers. You can find this episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many other podcast platforms. Please join our community on Facebook, the Finance Leader Podcast Facebook group. This will be our community to grow within the finance and accounting profession. Until next time, you can check out more resources at stephenmclean.com and sign up for my updates so you don't miss an episode of the show. And now, go lead your team, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.